welcome to another episode of Have Your Say. Today, again, my guest in the studio is Kenneth Schultz. Kenneth Schultz, as you probably remember, is the writer of this wonderful book called Western Civilization Under Siege. Today, we will discuss one aspect of that threat on Western civilization, which is, believe it or not, coming from universities. I wonder how Western civilization can be threatened by universities and education.
The members of the Frankfurt School got into the universities in America, and then they
First of all, they got into the universities in Germany.
Yes, they started out in Germany. They had to get out of Germany in a bit of a hurry when Hitler came along.
Yes.
But they found their way into the American universities. Because they were academics, they were accepted straight into the universities, and they started to spread their pernicious propaganda throughout the universities, so that those graduates then went on to become future lecturers and professors.
Usually universities should be the place of ideas and the challenges of ideas. So it doesn't really matter if you think differently from the others. But you say that these people mainly from Germany, bringing some dangerous ideas into the United States, and no one challenged them at university, no one can beat them on the head with their teachings?
Apparently not. Apparently not.
So therefore, probably America was not prepared mentally.
It wasn't being prepared to be invaded by a strange philosophy that people do nothing about. It sounded plausible. Everybody likes, well, a lot of people like the idea of a socialist utopia.
Yes.
All are equal and blah, blah, blah. And so it sort of found its way in without much problem at all. But then, of course, the students of those academics became teachers of the same stuff, and so it went on and went on.
So how many years elapsed until these teachings sort of took over the academy?
1 or 2 generations, perhaps.
Yes.
Remember, they went there in the mid-30s.
Yes.
So in 1 or 2 generations, one generation passed it on to the next, until now it is fairly complete that most American universities and a lot of Australian universities are really Marxist enclaves. Their idea is that nobody else is allowed to have any other philosophy now.
This is today, we talk.
Today. And if you want
it was, you know, almost 90 years ago, 80 years ago. So how that time of 60, 50, 80 years was not enough to the world and to intellectuals who studying university, who not just studying what the bloody teachers teaching them, they're going to the libraries, they can read, they can research, they can get all the other ideas, because the doors are not necessarily shut on the other ideas, because you still got
the doors are shut on other ideas to a fair degree. And if you want a prime example of that,
yes,
in current times now, Western civilization is almost a dirty word, a concept. Now the professors are talking about the evils of Western civilization,
such as
colonialism, slavery, white privilege. So when somebody...
But colonialism and slavery, it sort of was really flourishing in the 18th, 19th century. And bits and pieces slowly disappeared in the 20th century and dismantled. So but that's not an argument now.
Well, these academics are now talking up all of that the Western civilization is to blame, even though that happened in the past.
Yes.
And now it's got to the stage now they don't teach Western civilization in universities. Along comes the Ramsay Group, which is a conservative group in Australia with a fair amount of funding, and they offered to pay for a course in Western civilization so people could learn about Western civilization.
About their own history.
Yes, and what happened? Sydney University won't have it. The academics, the staff, students even, went up in arms, so they kicked Ramsay out. You're not allowed to teach there the good things about Western civilization anymore. That is how bad it has got.
So you are saying people rewriting history, and they don't let the other people to be taught about what's really happened.
That's right. They don't want to talk about all the good things of Western civilization, and there are a lot of good things about it. It's the greatest civilization that ever existed, and it's responsible for our lifestyle today, our freedom and wealth and longevity. But no, where the academics, the universities are now talking that down, and all they're doing is harping on the past, the slavery, the colonialism, treating of indigenous populations, and really...
Which all happened, by the way.
Yes, it happened, but that's in the past.
It's part of history.
But who got rid of slavery? England started. They're the same Western civilization. Slavery had been going on for centuries, forever.
Forever. And slavery and human trafficking is not killed. Doesn't matter what the academics say. That is part of the world.
It is part of the world history.
The world's history, and having critical thinking. On that note, we have to go for a short break, but please stay with us, because after the break, we're continuing our discussion with Kenneth Schultz in regard to the threat of Western civilization. Welcome back to Have Your Say. We are going to continue our discussion with Kenneth Schultz of the dangers of Western civilization. Ken, could you name few of today's high priests who are preaching the world about what is good, what is not, and how beautiful is an open society?
Yes, well, a number of these people appear on the cover of the book, starting with Stalin, but I mean, he's in the past. But in the current time, one of the people on the cover is a well-known man, George Soros.
Oh, yeah, I should know him because he is Hungarian.
That's right.
And he is a non-practicing Jew. This is George Soros. Soros György in Hungarian, yes. But now, before we go into George Soros, we should talk about a little bit of Stalin. Okay, Stalin is in the past, but he is a very important person to use sort of propaganda very effectively to damage the Western world and the Western culture.
Indeed.
So tell us about his activities.
Yeah, well, from the rise of Stalin, straight away his view was that, again, we want to rule the world like so many emperors, dictators, and we want to bring about revolution in the Western world, the same as we brought about revolution in Russia. We want people to rise up, throw off their chains, as he says, and install a communist government. And he started out by sending out huge number of people, particularly into the United States, spreading disinformation, spying on the US, and just infiltrating all the parts of the US.
What sort of years are we talking about?
Well, the Communist Party of the United States started in 1919, so that's when they really got going.
So that's soon after the Russian Revolution.
That's right.
Before Lenin died.
Yes.
Long before.
So that's when they really started, and their idea, the Communist Party of the US says, you know, we want to overthrow the government. Basically, that's what they said. That was in their platform. And
but so many other parties in the US been created to overthrow the government even before the Communist Party,
yes.
Because, yes, there's
But
some sort of tendency in the US to overthrow the government and have no government at all, as we know, but it's never happened. So anyway, back to the US Communist Party.
They put a large amount of effort into it, particularly from 1933 onwards, when the US recognised the Soviet as a legitimate government, and that opened the floodgates, and thousands of Soviet agents came into America, and they infiltrated all through the system, right up to the highest levels. One of the Franklin Roosevelt's closest aides, if you like, Harry Hopkins, was, from all intents and purposes, a Soviet agent. And he had the ear of the president. So, and right through the government, through different agencies, they did a good job of infiltrating and making known what their views were. And of course, back then when communism wasn't a dirty word, a lot of people fell for it and openly joined the Communist Party because it seemed a good thing to do.
But the Second World War changed a lot.
Changed all that. And all of a sudden, these people realised, hang on, communism isn't so good. And after the war, some of them changed their mind and went to the government and said, hang on, you're being subverted by the communists. And
so that was the start of the Cold War.
Yes, that was really when the Cold War got going, and finally the US woke up that that was their major enemy, the Soviet Empire.
Also in the same time after the Second World War, in Italy, in Germany, in France, and even in the UK, communist agents worked hard, not just in the spy field, like James Bond, but on the real field of politics, because they got their registered parties, and even Italy was a communist government in few times after the Second World War, been elected. And the French loved communism. They admired it.
That's right.
So what happened all over the world? But, however, whatever Stalin done and the communist, the world didn't turn into communist, did it?
No, but a lot of people turned into communist sympathisers. A lot of people, and they are still today. And we still have active communist parties today. Well, George Soros is a very wealthy, he's a billionaire. I think he's worth about 11 billion. So he puts millions and millions of dollars into his favourite things. And I don't say he's working for the Soviets or the leftovers. George Soros is working for George Soros. And he's got delusions of grandeur. He's even said that he's got a plan to save the world. But he's not going to tell us just what it is just yet.
But he also admitted he is a prophet of God. He communicates with God. He thinks he is one of the gods. How can we, because he's got shitload of money, being so disillusioned, thinking he is God?
Well, he's got delusions of grandeur. That's unfortunately what it is. And he's using his billions to forward his plans. And he's set up numerous front groups, particularly in the US, but also even his tentacles reach all around the world, as you're aware. He's
front
overthrown.
Groups, you mean non-government NGOs?
Well, they're not NGOs as such. They
are claiming they are NGOs.
Some are,
yes.
But others are just activists pushing certain things.
Like Get Up?
Get Up. Now, there's a thing that was inspired by Soros, that the two people who started Get Up in Australia,
yes.
Heinemans and whatever, they worked for years for Soros. They learnt his techniques. They learnt how he did things. They started up some of his organisations in the US, and they knew how it all worked. And they came to Australia, set up Get Up, with the help of Bill Shorten and a few others. I think Shorten was on the board for a while. But they also had a nice little donation from George, Uncle George, to get started. And now they've become a real force in Australia. They claim that they're neutral and they're just, doing good stuff in the community, but they're hard left. And in the next election, they're now going out of the way to try and knock some of the Liberals out of government, and they're supporting some of these so-called independents. And I believe that it may be Get Up or somebody else's. There seems to be a commonality amongst some of these new independents. They've suddenly accepted the climate change religion, and they're all going to work for that and try and knock out the Liberal members, including Tony Abbott. But Get Up is behind the scenes in, I'd say, most of that.
Now, Ford Foundation.
Ford Foundation is going down a similar path to George Soros. Not so much, they possibly want world government, but they're putting in a lot of left-wing ideology into the world by supporting. Again, they have a huge amount of money. They're worth about 11 billion, and the Ford Foundation puts in over $500 million a year into all of these different little groups, similar to George, that will promote different things. And I mean, we had the prime example of this last year when all of a sudden LGBT was the flavour of the month. You know, you go back 10 years.
Of the year,
Of the year, yeah.
not just the month.
You go back 10 years or so, most people were opposed to same-sex marriage. But after all this stuff, 60% of the population or so were in favour of it. And why? Because there was so much going on behind the scenes, and Ford Foundation had a lot to do with it. In my book, I went in and had a look at their returns. Because they are a charity, so-called, they have to put in an annual return.
Yes.
And I just picked some of the things out of that, and it showed that they put in millions of dollars to promote LGBT through the universities, through pressure groups, so that
In the United States or
and
worldwide?
around the world, around the world.
Around the world,
Yep.
yes.
And that's why it suddenly became a big topic last year, that all of a sudden everybody was into it, all knew about it. But it's people like the Ford Foundation and Soros who are promoting it. It's just part of their overall plan to change our culture, change our system.
But Ford Foundation has got its name from the family of the Ford.
Yes.
So what is the link as of today between the Ford Foundation and the Ford family?
No link at all. It started out, Henry Ford and his son started the Ford Foundation
Yes.
to promote, if you like, Western civilization, capitalism and so on. And it grew, but somewhere in the, wherever it was, in the 30s, I think it was, it got taken over. They decided they would put other people in to run it, and they didn't really vet them. And they got some left people in there, and the left people got other left people in. And finally, and then they took a sharp turn to the left. And at that stage, I think the last Ford might have been Edsel Ford, and he had a big falling out with them. He was really unhappy with the direction of it. And he left the foundation, but he left all the money there. It had to carry on, and so now it's become a left-wing system, foundation that's got no connection to the Ford family anymore, other than the Ford family's minions that they put into it.
And the name.
And the name,
of the Ford.
yeah, it's got nothing to do with Ford anymore.
So it's independently working from the inheritance of the hundreds of millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
the money that old Henry and his son put into it to do good.
And they're not fighting now for Western civilization
They're
and
fighting against
capitalism. They're fighting against it.
They are.
That's a great irony. It's a great irony of history and the life of, you know, some God-given good things turning into something
Not
really
so good.
different.
Yes, unfortunately.
Something really different.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
So that's interesting to learn what is really endangering the Western world.
Yeah.
We went through a few things today, but we're coming back with another episode when we will examine how Islam is really endangers the Western civilization.